right, this is where I left you, and we were talking about gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria. Little pink and purple beautiful things, great for Valentine's Day. If you're taking that class around Valentine's Day, give your loved one a cherished gram-negative or gram-positive gift. I'm sure they will love it, and you can say that you made it in the lab. Just don't tell them that it came from me or the idea came from me. All right, so as far as these types of classifications and the terminology and these little bitty boxes that we talked about last time, we can continue to talk about these terms and boxes that we can lump things in. And the first one that we're going to mention is going to be objectionable microorganisms. I object, Your Honor. Oh, no, absolutely not. Okay, well, objectionable basically means, well, we do not like them. They are bad news. We want to stay away from them. Please don't hang out with them. They're going to get you in trouble if you do keep hanging out and you keep going places together. So leave those at home. Do not carry them with you, please. And don't give them to anybody. So objectionable microorganisms are also known as pathogens. And these, of course, are known to cause disease in humans. And they can lead to very dangerous infections if you are not very careful. So these are very often what we call bowel tolerant. And bowel is kind of like everything if you eat, if you swallow, it goes into your stomach, it gets processed, and then it goes into your small intestines. Bowel is part of that. So these are tolerant, which means that they can actually survive here. So in the last video, I was like, hey, don't be that person. Don't go to the bathroom and wipe your tail, and then don't wash your hands and go into the kitchen and fix a nice fresh salad because you're getting ready to eat healthy. You maybe have E. coli on your hands, and that E. coli can be spread to the food that you're getting ready to eat. And then that E. coli is going to go into your mouth and down through your esophagus and into your stomach. And that E. coli can actually stay around. That E. coli can set up a nasty infection. And you've called it, oh no, I must have got a food poisoned. Okay, well, that's what that is. Somebody was filthy. Somebody was nasty. Some bacteria grew on it, got transferred on it, or maybe it's just simple. It wasn't held to temperature and it just stayed out there for a little bit. And then things and nasty stuff just started growing on it. Okay, it could come from many different places, not just the bathroom, but salmonella is also one of these. We're like, whenever you handle raw eggs or raw chicken, make sure you wash your hands to prevent the transfer of salmonella, because you can get food poison if you do that. So these are objectionable microorganisms. We also call them pathogens because it's easier to say and it's shorter and it looks much sweeter. These are going to be pathogens that are known to cause diseases. External and oral routes of administration send the product through the strongest parts of the body's immune system. So, the immune system does play a role. The immune system is there to make sure that you do not get sick. Your immune system will see these invaders and it will be like, oh, I know you. I told you never show your face down this street again, and I'm calling for backup. So that's what your immune system does. And your immune system calls for backup, and it comes out and attacks, and it hopefully kills. Okay, well, oral routes and external routes, whatever they might be, well, sometimes these things will actually hold up and the immune system is not going to be your best friend. Maybe it can't do the job fully, but it can help you, and we hope that it does help you. So whenever you start to feel sick, whenever you get a common cold, whatever the case might be, your immune system is kicking in and your immune system is at war with whatever kind of nasty germ has come your way. So that's kind of the idea here. And sometimes these are very resistant. All right. So now you see another term. It looks like it says parent. So this is parenteral, and parenteral drugs bypass the immune system. And the way that they do this is they don't actually come in contact with it directly. It is through injection, or you're breathing these drugs in. So there's no natural safety built in. So for instance, if you were getting exposed in another way, then okay, that's great, that's fine. Your immune system can pick that up and it can fight it off very early. So that way you maybe have been exposed to something, but your immune system is so good, it's fought it off and you will never be the wiser. You don't even know that you were trying to get sick at a certain point, all right? But these, what looks like, again, so parenteral. So those parenteral drugs bypass that immune system, and they are meant to go through injection or inhalation. So no safety built-in at all. And what happens is that if we make these types of drugs and we are producing them for a consumer, then we have to make sure, specifically for this category, absolutely, that no microorganisms are at play at all. Because not only inside of the product, but on the delivery device of the product as well. Because what's happening is that this could be a shot, and that shot is going to be delivered by a nurse or a doctor. And if things are not sterile, if things have germs or things have microorganisms in them or on the surface of them, then we're going to be in a world of hurt, because we are directly injecting that stuff inside of us, and the immune system maybe doesn't have time to react in that way. All right. So a lot of times these parenterals are going to be IVs. So intravenous, that's what that stands for. They're going to be IMs, and that's going to stand for intramuscular. Okay, so they've put a shot into my butt cheek. Okay, you've all had that. IV intravenous means inside of the vein. So this is going to be something that they give you a shot wise. So, okay, we're going to put a little rubber band around your arm, and then we're going to make sure we find a little vein, and we're going to stick this needle in it, and we're going to squirt some stuff inside of there. That's kind of an IV, or an IV drip. I mean, that would work just the same way. Or subcutaneously. So that's going to be abbreviated with an SC. So these are all types of drugs that have to be produced, that have to be manufactured. So think of the common, flu shot. Okay, that's going to be a parenteral drug, and that's going to have extra steps that we're going to have to take in order to make sure that those stay microorganism free. Okay, so we're going to have to be really careful with on the production line if I'm assigned into those categories. Next up is an endotoxin. Endotoxins, they quote, are large molecules that exist in the cell wall of gram-negative bacteria. So we talked about gram-negative and gram-positive in the last video. Gram-negatives are those things that have very thin walls, but they are doubled up. So they have two layers, really, that you got to fight through, and they are antibiotic resistant because of that. Those molecules are also called pyrogens, and the reason is because they induce fever. So endotoxins are these large molecules that come along for the ride, and they are going to be called pyrogens. Now, up at the top, these are pathogens, not pyrogens. So keep that in mind. These are two different terms that we're using. So pathogens are going to be microbes that will cause disease. Okay, that means they're dirty, they're filthy, and they're going to make you dirty and filthy. And some of you might enjoy that. I don't know. And then the next is pyrogen. So pyro, okay, if you're a Marvel fan, you know what pyro did. If you're a pyromaniac, you know maybe what that word means. That means heat and fire, right? Well, that's kind of why we call them pyrogens, because they set up fever. So, oh my gosh, could you feel my forehead? Do I feel hot to you? Well, a pyrogen is probably at play if you do have that fever that is creeping up and up and up. So we want to make sure that all of these things are taken care of. Everything is super clean in the production line before we start giving it to people in whatever fashion we give it to them in. So whether that's a liquid, whether that's a solid, whether that's a shot, who knows? But everything has to stay super clean for that reason. Spores is another category. The reason that spores is there is because, or a category is a box of spores, right? The reason that that box is there, that category is there, is because I like to think of spores as like little bitty water balloons. and they're ready to pop. So what happens here is that if you have spores, if you are, the Last of Us fan, I mean, think about what types of things go on there. So these are spores, and they're sitting and they're waiting, and they can pop. And when they pop, poof, there it goes. And oh my God, don't breathe it in because you'll turn into one of those zombie creatures. That's what this is all about. And spores do actually do that in real life. So they actually stay together, they stay intact, and even in the cleaning processes, they might actually stay as a spore. And you could be killing out all of the microorganisms through that cleaning and sterilization SOP that you are following, but those spores are going to remain, and those spores do not necessarily get killed. And those spores will actually cause us a problem because over time it can actually burst open and it can create that water balloon. And then when that happens, our surfaces and our areas are contaminated all over again. So please, please keep that in mind. One of the most common things, I believe, the misconceptions here are mold. So if you are trying to kill out the mold that is in your house because you see some mold that's starting to form and you go hit it with some bleach or some type of cleaning agent, then absolutely you can kill the mold that is there, but spores can also be present, and spores can just pop at a later date, and then all of a sudden you get this mold problem all over again. So unless you kill out the spores as well as the microorganism, it's not going to do you any good. So some of the cleaning steps will include extra cleaning agents that are known to kill out spores if that is a common problem in these work environments. So on the slide, it says spores are produced a certain gram-positive bacteria and some gram-negative bacteria, and spores can linger for thousands of years. So this does not have to be in a few days. I mean, it can take its time, and then it can pop at the right moment. And then it gives you some examples of things that do have these types of spores that can just keep popping, keep forming, and so forth. And you probably are familiar with all three that are there. So tetanus, botulism, and anthrax. So all of these can lead to infections. All of these can lead to death because, aka, they're fatal, right? I see that on almost every single one of these definitions. And spores are by no means something that we should be ignoring or that we will worry with at a later date. So we really do want to take care of them now. When we've talked about the categories that were here, one of these things was an endotoxin on the end of that slide, and I was like, these are pyrogens and they cause a fever. Absolutely, those endotoxins, they are large molecules just like we defined them before. They are inside of the cell walls of these gram-negative bacteria. Again, those are the diderms. Those are the two layers, okay? So those pyrogens cause fever, and they get released when the bacteria actually die. So what happens here is that the immune system, if it can fight off that bacteria, that's great, and it destroys those little bitty microorganisms, and that bacteria will start to die, that bacteria will start to decompose in a roundabout way, and then when it does that, it actually starts releasing all of these molecules that might be on the inside of that, and then that can cause an additional problem later on down the road, that can cause additional symptoms on down the road, or maybe that is actually what's leading to your symptoms in the first place. So maybe the bacteria itself wasn't a big deal and your immune system was fighting it, and maybe you had no clue that that was going on, and then all of a sudden you start to feel sick and you get a fever, and that could be because as your immune system is fighting this bacteria off and as it's destroying it, it's releasing those large molecules that are on the inside, and that is what your body is actually responding to, not necessarily the bacteria itself. So everything is going to monitor all of the cleanliness that is in the laboratory. And the reason is because the USP tells us to. All right. So the United States Pharmacopoeia will have a list of things that they will deem as objectionable. And these are things that we want to take a look at. These are things that we want to test for. I mean, how many times have you seen like ice cream has been recalled because of listeria or something like that, right? How many times have you seen in literature or articles or on the news, oh no, the spinach leaves or the lettuce has been recalled because there's E. coli on it? Well, that means that someone with dirty, filthy hands, probably that used the bathroom that didn't wash it, probably handled it in some form or fashion, and then off it went. So now all of a sudden we get these colonies that begin to grow, and then we eat them and we ingest them, and then we get sick because of it. So all of these are going to be targets for the USP, and because we're working in the biopharmaceutical world, I mean, it's still pharma, so USP does have a hold of what we do many times, and that is going to be the purpose of that list, and why we do some of the testing, and why we look for some of the things that we look for in the production line. All right, so that's going to finish up that section. In the next section, we're going to talk about contamination control, and this is really going to be more toward aseptic conditions. So how do I follow aseptic protocol and work in aseptic rooms and blah, 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 blah. So that's what we're going to talk about in the next video, in the next section for 7.5.